Welcome, my dear fellow traveler, as we journey into a moment of quiet calm and relaxation. Wherever you are in the world, at whatever time of day, whether night is gently falling, lulling you to sleep, or you're simply seeking a serene historical narrative to unwind, I'm so glad you've chosen to spend time with me tonight. As someone who has dedicated their life to delving into the endless flow of history, especially the intimate, hidden stories from the enigmatic medieval era, I've always been fascinated by how daily life unfolded in those distant times. We often imagine the Middle Ages through glorious tales of wise kings, earth-shattering battles, or romantic courtly love beneath majestic castles. But tonight, I invite you to pull back that romantic curtain with me and confront a different, much more intimate aspect, something we all experience every single day. Astor's food. Have you ever paused to wonder, what did our ancestors, those who lived in medieval Europe, actually eat? What did their meals look like? And more importantly, did they truly enjoy what they consumed? The answer, I'm afraid, will be quite surprising and might send a slight shiver down your spine. Because, to put it most accurately, asterisk medieval food, for the vast majority of the population, truly sucked. Close your eyes gently and try to visualize a rustic scene, a humble wooden table set in a cramped, thatched cottage. On it, a meager meal, a bowl of thin, bland porridge, a hunk of dense, coarse bread, and perhaps, if the diner was lucky, a few morsels of tough, stringy meat. This is what sustained the majority of Europeans for centuries. While kings and nobles feasted lavishly on multi-course banquets, the average peasant subsisted on a diet that was not only meager but also incredibly monotonous, repeated to the point of utter boredom. What factors conspired to make food in the Middle Ages so unappetizing for the masses? Was it simply poverty? Or were there other elements at play? Hidden secrets in preparation, preservation, and even fraud in trade? Tonight, I will explore this question with you and transport us back to a time when filling one's belly was a daily struggle, a silent battle fought in every home, with every meal. You might be surprised to learn that fragrant spices like cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and pepper, items we readily find in our kitchens today, were incredibly expensive luxuries, reserved exclusively for the wealthy. A single pound of nutmeg in the 11th century cost the equivalent of 7 fattened oxen. Hard to believe, isn't it? This scarcity and prohibitive cost shaped a culinary landscape that we can barely imagine today. Let the taste of bland porridge, the coarse texture of rough bread, and the absence of enticing aromas gently guide your mind. This is a journey not merely about food, but about experiencing life, understanding the resilience and creativity of our ancestors in the face of scarcity. Are you ready to uncover the secrets hidden in every historical meal? Close your eyes and let's begin. Welcome back, my fellow travelers, as we continue our deep dive into the harsh reality of medieval cuisine. We've just stepped into a world where a meal wasn't a joy but a battle for survival. Tonight, I'll bring you closer to the lives of ordinary peasants, who constituted the vast majority of Europe's population, and witness how scarcity shaped their every bite. Close your eyes and imagine you're sitting in a humble thatched cottage, the flickering firelight from the hearth the only source of illumination. On the rough wooden table, a remarkably thin, bland bowl of porridge serves as the main meal. Beside it is a hard, dark, dense chunk of bread, seemingly capable of breaking teeth. This wasn't a lavish feast, but a harsh reality, a monotony so profound it was almost haunting. Have you ever wondered what made medieval peasant food so bland? Today, we can easily reach for a jar of cinnamon, a bag of pepper, or a piece of ginger in our kitchens. But in the Middle Ages, these were luxuries, incredibly precious. Cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, pepper. These fragrant spices were brought from distant lands by intrepid merchants, risking their lives to traverse treacherous silk roads. Try to imagine the life of a spice trader then, crossing harsh deserts, facing bandits and disease, just to bring a hint of luxury to European courts. To give you a sense of their value, in the 11th century, a pound, about 0.45 kilograms, of nutmeg cost the equivalent of *** 7 fattened oxen. Yes, you heard that right. 7 oxen. At such exorbitant prices, how could common folk even dream of adding any flavor to their meals? They were forced to make do with locally available ingredients, pungent garlic, sharp mustard, and sour vinegar to enliven their plain fare. It was a deprivation of taste, a silent suffering that we, in modern times, can barely comprehend. But the blandness of peasant cuisine wasn't solely due to the lack of spices. It was exacerbated by the ** scarcity of fresh produce. Without reliable preservation methods like refrigerators or cold storage, fruits and vegetables were seasonal treats at best. You were lucky if you had a small plot of land to grow hardy crops like onions, leeks, and cabbages. But these vegetables could hardly create a balanced diet. Most meals still relied heavily on grains, barley, rye, and wheat. These grains were used to make bread and porridge, forming the backbone of every meal. Can you feel the sheer tedium, the monotonous repetition of such a diet? Day after day, week after week, year after year, it was just porridge and bread. Although this diet might fill the stomach, it lacked essential nutrients, leading to widespread malnutrition and stunted growth. Historical records indicate that peasants were often significantly smaller in stature than those of higher social classes, partly due to this unbalanced diet. And when it came to meat that most prized of foods, it was almost a myth on the peasant table. A prosperous family might keep a pig, some chickens, or even a cow. But these animals were valuable resources, not to be slaughtered lightly. Meat was reserved for special occasions, like weddings, religious feasts, or when an animal was too old or infirm to serve any other purpose. When meat was available, every scrap, from nose to tail, was used. Offal or organ meats were common peasant fare, as were small birds and game caught by trapping or hunting, though poaching in royal forests was an extremely risky endeavor, punishable by severe penalties. Fish was slightly more accessible than meat, especially for those living near rivers or the sea. But even fish was often preserved by drying, smoking, or salting for lean times. The result was a far cry from the delicate, flaky fillets we enjoy today. Herring, cod, and eel were among the most common catches, and they would be packed in barrels with generous amounts of salt to stave off spoilage. Freshwater fish like carp and pike were a delicacy reserved for the nobility, who maintained private fish ponds on their estates. Can you feel that yearning for a different taste, a touch of freshness, a bit of meat? It was a silent, persistent craving that shaped every dream of the peasant. It's a profound emotional trigger, touching the primal human desire for abundance and variety, something we, today, often take for granted. Let the bland taste of thin porridge, the coarse texture of dark bread, and the silent longing for a piece of fresh meat gently seep into your mind, guiding you to sleep. A sleep in which you will understand more about the resilience of our ancestors in the face of scarcity and appreciate more deeply every meal we are fortunate enough to have today. Welcome back, my fellow travelers, as we continue our deep dive into the harsh reality of medieval food. We've just explored the peasants' plight with their bland meals and their desperate longing for spices or fresh meat. But the challenges of sustenance didn't stop at scarcity and monotony. Tonight, I'll reveal a more poignant aspect, a hidden secret lurking in the most basic of foods. Adulteration and fraud, turning every meal into a gamble with health and trust. Imagine, if you will, a bustling medieval town where dimly lit, narrow streets wound between tightly packed wooden houses. In a hidden corner, a baker named Ulrich furtively glances left and right before ducking back into his shop. He pulls out a sack of sawdust and begins kneading it into the dough, stretching his meager supply of flour. For many bakers, this was the only way to eke out a living. Bread was the lifeblood of the medieval diet, but its purity was often compromised. Unscrupulous bakers would add fillers like ground acorns, chalk, or even sawdust to extend their dough. The result was a coarse, gritty loaf that offered little nutrition. The very staple that sustained peasants through their back-breaking labor became yet another hardship they had to endure. Can you feel the helplessness of a peasant realizing that their most basic food, meant to be their sustenance, was being blatantly adulterated? That's an emotional trigger that taps into the betrayal of trust, a bitterness that's not just about taste but about the spirit. And it wasn't just bread. Ale and wine also fell victim to the desperation of the times. Alewives and innkeepers, struggling to turn a profit, would water down their brew to stretch it further. The resulting drink was a thin, sour swill that bore little resemblance to the hearty ale that was once the pride of the British Isles. Imagine Agnes, an alewife, toiling over her bubbling cauldron, constantly stirring in yet another bucket of cloudy water. Her children hovered nearby, their hungry eyes watching every drip, knowing their next meal depended on this batch. As she ladled out a mug of the watered-down brew, she sighed, remembering the rich, full-bodied ale her grandmother once crafted, a family recipe now lost to necessity. In an era when clean drinking water was a rarity, this adulterated ale and wine became an unfortunate necessity. Wells and rivers were often contaminated by human and animal waste, making them rife with disease. The alcohol in these drinks, though diluted, was still potent enough to kill some harmful bacteria. So, peasants were forced to choose between risking sickness from tainted water or the empty calories of watered-down ale. It was a grim choice, where every path led to some form of deprivation. Authorities of the time did attempt to curb these deceptive practices. The size of bread and ale in the 13th century, for instance, set strict regulations on the price, weight, and quality of bread and ale. Transgressors faced hefty fines or even time in the pillory, but with limited means of enforcement and the desperation of the poor, these laws did little to stem the tide of food adulteration. The result was that the medieval peasant's lot was one of constant compromise, a balancing act between the gnawing pain of hunger and the bitter disappointment of adulterated food. Every mouthful was a reminder of their precarious existence, where even the most basic sustenance could not be taken for granted. Can you imagine the feeling of living in a society where trust was eroded from the most basic necessities? When the baker you trusted secretly added sawdust to your bread, when the brewer you knew watered down the only safe drink for thirst. It wasn't just a material scarcity. It was a scarcity of trust, of fairness, of a social order they could rely on. The peasants' disillusionment upon realizing they were being cheated, not just by nature's harsh laws but by their own fellow humans, was a lingering psychological burden, deepening the despair in an already difficult life. Let the taste of gritty bread, the sourness of diluted ale, and the constant anxiety of fraud seep into your mind, guiding you to sleep. A sleep in which you will understand more about the cost of desperation and the resilience of our ancestors as they had to live in a world where even a meal was a perilous struggle. Welcome back, my resilient fellow travelers, as we continue our deep dive into the harsh realities of medieval food. We've just explored the constant anxiety brought by adulterated meals, where trust and health hung in the balance. But the challenges of sustenance weren't limited to the food itself. Tonight, I'll lead you into the very living spaces of our ancestors, where a dire lack of sanitation turned homes into breeding grounds for disease, transforming every meal into a gamble with death. Imagine, if you will, a small, thatched cottage, huddled against the chill of a medieval winter. Inside, a family huddles around a sputtering fire, their breath mingling with the steam rising from a bubbling pot of pottage. In the corner of the room, a pig roots around for scraps among the rushes covering the dirt floor. Its snorts and grunts form a constant backdrop to the family's daily life. This was the reality for many medieval peasants, a life lived in close quarters with their livestock. Animals were often kept inside the home for warmth and safety during the cold months. However, this arrangement came at a steep cost in terms of hygiene and health. Animal dung and waste mingled with the straw and rushes that served as the only floor covering, creating an ideal ** breeding ground for disease. Flies, lice, fleas, and rodents thrived in these unsanitary conditions, making life a constant misery for the human occupants. Can you imagine the pungent, heavy stench in the air, the dampness, and the constant anxiety about illness? That's an emotional trigger that taps into humanity's most basic instinct for cleanliness, a profound discomfort that we, today, would find almost unbearable. Even in the grandest castles, sanitation remained a significant challenge. Without an understanding of germs and proper hygiene, even the most lavish feasts could end in tragedy. The story of * King John of England * serves as a poignant example. In 1216, while traveling through King's Lynn, Norfolk, England, the king reportedly overindulged in peaches and new cider. Historians now believe these peaches were likely spoiled, leading to a severe case of dysentery that ultimately claimed the king's life. The death of even the most powerful king due to a spoiled meal clearly illustrated the harsh reality of medieval life. Poor sanitation was rampant and had grave consequences for human health. In the crowded cities of medieval Europe, the situation was even worse. Narrow streets were choked with garbage and human waste, tainting the air and seeping into the water supply. In London, the River Thames served as both a source of drinking water and the city's dumping ground. It's little wonder that disease ran rampant, with outbreaks of dysentery, typhoid fever, and even the terrifying Black Death. The Black Death which wiped out an estimated one-third of Europe's population in the 14th century, was partly enabled by the unsanitary conditions in which people lived. The plague was spread by rats and fleas, which thrived in the squalor of medieval cities. With garbage and waste piling up and hygiene standards virtually non-existent, it was inevitable that pestilence would take hold and spread. For the average peasant, there was almost no escape from these unsanitary conditions. They lived and died amidst the filth, their bodies weakened by malnutrition and constant exposure to disease. Even the simple act of eating, which should have been a source of nourishment and comfort, became a gamble with every bite. Can you imagine the sheer revulsion and constant fear? The foul stench of rotting garbage and animal carcasses, the air thick with pathogens, and the perpetual anxiety that every time you put food in your mouth, you might be inviting death itself? That's a profound emotional trigger, touching our most primal fear of illness and contamination, something we, with our modern knowledge, can scarcely comprehend. However, it's important to remember that medieval people were not ignorant or unconcerned about cleanliness. They may not have understood the science behind disease transmission, but they recognized the importance of keeping food and water clean. Monasteries and hospitals often had strict hygiene rules, and medieval housewives took great pride in keeping their homes as spotless as possible. But in a world without refrigeration, proper sewage systems, or clean running water, very little could be done. Every day was a battle against the forces of decay and contamination, and all too often, those forces won. So, the next time you enjoy a meal in a clean, modern kitchen, spare a thought for your medieval ancestors who fought that battle every day of their lives with the odds firmly stacked against them. It's a profound reminder of the cost of survival and the gratitude we owe for today's comforts. Welcome back, my resilient fellow travelers, as we continue our deep dive into the harsh realities of medieval food. We've just witnessed how unsanitary conditions turned homes into breeding grounds for disease, making every meal a gamble with death. But the challenges of filling one's belly didn't just come from scarcity or illness. Tonight, I'll lead you to another facet, a silent inner battle where faith and survival clashed. The church's influence on diet and the spiritual burden of fasting days. In the medieval world, the Catholic Church wielded immense influence over every aspect of life, and food was no exception. The religious calendar dictated what could be eaten and when, adding another layer of complexity to an already challenging food landscape. The Church mandated strict fasting and abstinence rules, particularly during the penitential season of Lent, the 40-day period leading up to Easter. During this time, all meat, dairy, eggs, and even olive oil in some regions were strictly off limits. Imagine, if you will, how incredibly demanding this was for those already struggling to put food on the table. Can you imagine the plight of a poor peasant family during the 40 days of Lent? Already subsisting on a meager diet of gruel and bread, they were now expected to forego even the occasional scrap of salted pork or dried fish, the only things that provided a modicum of flavor and sustenance to their meals. The growling of empty stomachs became a constant companion as they struggled to maintain their piety in the face of gnawing hunger. The story of John and Margaret, a fictional but all too typical peasant couple, illustrates the hardships many faced during this time. John and Margaret toiled from sunup to sundown on their small plot of land, barely growing enough to feed their 3 children. When Lent arrived, they dutifully put away their meager stores of preserved meat and resigned themselves to a diet of thin gruel and boiled turnips. As the days wore on, their energy flagged and their tempers frayed. The children, too young to understand the reasons behind their deprivation, cried incessantly from hunger. John, a devout man, struggled to maintain his faith in the face of such hardship, while Margaret secretly dreamed of the savory stew she would make when Lent was finally over. Their plight was not unique. Across the land, peasant families faced similar struggles. Their already meager diets were further restricted by the dictates of the church. Some, driven by desperation, resorted to poaching in the royal forests, knowing full well that if caught, they would face severe punishments, from maiming to death. Others simply went without, their bodies weakening and their spirits breaking under the weight of their devotion. Can you feel the bitter irony of this situation? The church, with its noble intention of encouraging spiritual reflection and penance, inadvertently imposed additional burdens on those already on the brink of survival. In a society already plagued by scarcity and inequality, the added burden of religious fasting could be the difference between life and death. However, amidst these hardships, there were still glimmers of hope and compassion. Monasteries and abbeys, with their vast landholdings and well-stocked larders, often served as a source of food aid for the poor. Monks and nuns, bound by their vows of charity and hospitality, would distribute bread and ale to the hungry, offering a rare respite from the gnawing hunger that was a constant companion for so many. One such story tells of a kind-hearted abbess, Hildegard of Bingen, who, upon seeing the gaunt faces of the peasants who came to her abbey seeking alms, ordered her kitchens to prepare a hearty pottage of vegetables and barley to be distributed to all who asked. The grateful recipients, their spirits lifted by this unexpected act of kindness, returned to their homes with renewed strength and a glimmer of hope in their hearts. But such acts of compassion were all too rare in a world where the divide between rich and poor was vast and unyielding. The church's influence on medieval food culture was a double-edged sword. It provided solace and aid to some, while imposing additional burdens on others. For the peasant family, faith was both a source of strength and a further trial to endure in the face of unrelenting hunger. Let the growling of the pious peasants' empty bellies, the echo of church bells in the cold air, and the weight of faith pressing down on hollow stomachs seep into your mind, guiding you to sleep. A sleep in which you will understand more about the complexities of belief and the enduring strength of the human spirit when faced with the harshest of choices. Welcome back, my resilient fellow travelers, as we continue our deep dive into the harsh realities of medieval cuisine. We've just witnessed how faith and the church's strict rules tested the hungry bellies of the populace. But now, let me shift our gaze to an entirely different world, a dazzlingly contrasting space, the opulent feast of the nobility where ultimate abundance often concealed unexpected costs. Imagine, if you will, the great hall of the castle is alive with the flickering light of 100 candles, tapestries lining the walls, their vibrant threads telling stories of heroic deeds and courtly love. At the head of the room, on a raised dais, the lord and lady preside over a scene of opulence and plenty. Down the center of the hall stretches a massive oak table, groaning under the weight of countless dishes. Whole roasted pigs, their skins crackling and golden, jostle for space with elegant silver platters of delicately spiced peacock. Baskets overflow with fresh-baked manchette bread. Each loaf is white and soft as a cloud. The air is thick with the aroma of saffron, cinnamon, and cloves. Spices so precious they're worth their weight in gold. In the cavernous castle kitchens, the master cook, a true culinary artist, orchestrates a symphony of creation. He barks orders at his underlings, who scurry to baste the meats, stir the pots, and plate the elaborate subtleties, sugar sculptures crafted into fanciful shapes of castles and unicorns. For the cook, this feast is a chance to showcase his artistry and ingenuity, to solidify his reputation and secure his place in his lord's favor. Can you feel it? The sheer overwhelm of such grandeur and enticing aromas? That's an emotional trigger that taps into the human longing for perfection, for luxury, something everyone, in any era, dreams of. The diners gorge themselves on a seemingly endless parade of dishes. They tear into the tender flesh of roast venison, sup on creamy almond soup, and savor the delicate flavor of blancmange, a dish of shredded chicken mixed with rice, milk, and sugar. They wash it all down with goblets of richly spiced wine and frothy ale. But even amidst this revelry, there are reminders of the precariousness of medieval life. A noble woman, her face flushed with wine, suddenly pales and excuses herself from the table, her stomach churning from the richness of the food. A knight, his teeth rotting from the sugary delicacies, bites into a particularly tough piece of meat and winces in pain. And hovering at the edges of the hall, the serving staff watch the excesses of their betters with a mixture of envy and resentment. They know that tomorrow they'll be back to their usual fare of coarse bread and thin gruel. The memory of this feast, a taunting reminder of the gulf between their world and that of their masters. This is the second emotional trigger in this section, the poignant, almost cruel contrast. The feeling of the poor witnessing the waste of the rich, while their own bellies ache with hunger. The enticing aromas of noble dishes drifting into the cold air of thatched cottages, becoming a cruel taunt. This * inequality in access to food * was a stark reflection of the rigid class hierarchy that defined the Middle Ages. While the nobility enjoyed a varied and plentiful diet, the vast majority of the population lived on the brink of starvation, their meals monotonous and meager. This disparity would persist for centuries, only gradually narrowing due to improvements in agricultural techniques and social reforms. However, even the most lavish feasts carried hidden dangers. With no means of refrigeration, food spoilage was a constant threat, and many nobles fell ill or even died from consuming contaminated fare. The very excess that was meant to showcase their wealth and status could prove to be their undoing. The story of King John of England, with his untimely death after reportedly overindulging in peaches, is a grim reminder that no one was safe from the perils lurking in medieval food. Let the rich aroma of the feast, the joyous laughter of the nobility, and the piercing sting of contrast seep into your mind. Contemplate the price of luxury and the resilience of those who lived, suffered, and found meaning in a world rife with injustice. As this story gently fades into the darkness, let it guide you to sleep, with a profound reflection on the enduring legacies left by medieval meals. We've journeyed together through a world where filling one's belly was a daily struggle. From the bland, thin gruel of peasants and bread mixed with grit, to the constant anxiety about hygiene and disease lurking in every bite. We've seen spices as precious as gold, lavish feasts concealing dangers, and harsh religious rules testing faith through hunger. It's been a bleak picture of scarcity, hardship, and inequality. But even amidst that extreme adversity, we've also witnessed brilliant sparks of the indomitable human spirit. People didn't just merely exist, they found ways to create, to adapt, and to find joy even in the most desperate conditions. Can you feel it? That strength of ingenuity and resilience? It's an emotional trigger that taps into our very instinct for survival and our capacity to overcome. Think of the resourcefulness of medieval women, the unsung heroines of the hearth. They bore the primary responsibility for feeding their families, and with creativity and resourcefulness, they found ways to coax flavor and nourishment out of even the humblest ingredients. In the folk traditions of pickling, preserving, and foraging, they passed down knowledge that would sustain their communities through lean times and lay the foundation for future culinary revolutions. In the communal ovens of villages and through shared meals, they nurtured a spirit of solidarity and resilience, a spirit as sustaining as any loaf of bread. When you picture peasants huddled around a fire after a long day's work, sharing meager bread and a few scraps of dried meat, you see not just scarcity, but the warmth of human connection. Every bite, however humble, was a moment of communion, an affirmation that they were not alone in this fight for survival. Can you imagine a medieval peasant transported to a modern supermarket? The sheer abundance and variety of food would surely overwhelm them. The vibrant colors of the produce section, the gleaming refrigerated cases filled with milk and eggs, shelves upon shelves of pre-packaged meals. It would be like stepping into a fairy tale, a land of unimaginable plenty. And this is the core of the message. We are the fortunate inheritors of centuries of culinary progress. Today, our supermarkets brim with fresh produce from around the globe. Our meats are safe and sanitized, and our spice racks hold flavors that would have been the envy of any medieval monarch. We can eat what we want, when we want, without fear of famine or food poisoning. But in this abundance, perhaps we have lost something too. The medieval peasant, for all their suffering, likely felt a deeper connection to the land and the turning of the seasons. They knew intimately the sweat and toil that went into every mouthful. While we may pity their limited options, they would likely look upon our pre-packaged, mass-produced meals with a mixture of wonder and horror. So, the next time you sit down to a meal, take a moment to savor the bounty before you. Appreciate the flavors and textures that medieval peasants could only dream of, and raise a glass, or perhaps a humble wooden cup, to the countless generations who toiled and struggled to bring us to this point. Their legacy is not one of scarcity and deprivation, but one of resilience, ingenuity, and hope, passed down through every meal painstakingly prepared from the barest of essentials. This is the call from the table. Remember our roots. Remember the struggle that secured today's meals, and remember our responsibility to share that abundance with those less fortunate. Because, in the end, the true measure of a society isn't in the opulence of its feasts, but in ensuring that everyone can know the simple joy of a full belly and a contented smile when a meal is shared. It's the ongoing fight for food justice, a dream worth fighting for, a dream with the power to transform the world and bring hope to all who hunger for a better tomorrow. Dear listeners, we've just concluded an emotional journey through the hardships of medieval cuisine, where every meal was a battle and every flavor a story. We've explored the bland, thin gruel of peasants, bread mixed with sawdust, and the constant fear of unsanitary conditions and disease lurking in every bite, as well as the hidden perils of opulent noble feasts. Now, as our minds gradually return to our warm present, let's contemplate the invaluable lessons from the past to cultivate gratitude and ignite hope for modern life. The first and perhaps most profound lesson that medieval meals teach us is the invaluable worth of the abundance and safety we now enjoy. Think of warm homes with central heating, cozy electric blankets, refrigerators brimming with food, and modern healthcare systems always ready to care for us. All these things, for our ancestors, were distant dreams, unimaginable luxuries. We easily take them for granted, readily complaining about the minor inconveniences of modern life. But when compared to the brutal fight for survival they faced every day just to eat, every grumble seems to vanish. Next time you step into a modern supermarket, pause for a moment. Look at the vibrant colors of fruits and vegetables from all over the world. The gleaming shelves stocked with meats, dairy, and countless pre-packaged meals. Can you imagine the sheer awe and joy of a medieval peasant stepping into such a place? They'd be speechless with wonder. That astonishment, that joy, should be our inspiration to Esters. Cherish every drop of clean water, every hot meal, every bit of warmth in our homes. For these are the fruits of countless generations who fought, sacrificed, and dreamed of a better life. Secondly, the story of medieval food is a powerful reminder of the extraordinary strength of the human spirit and the value of community. Despite being tormented by hunger, plagued by disease, and facing dwindling trust due to food fraud, our ancestors did not succumb. They found strength in family solidarity, in the sharing spirit of neighbors, and in those rare moments of joy around the hearth or at village festivals. Small acts of kindness, a shared log of firewood, a warm bowl of soup, became the bonds that pulled them through arduous months. In modern life, though we may face fewer brutal survival challenges, the values of community, connection, and compassion remain immensely important. Let's make time for family, for friends, and not hesitate to lend a helping hand to those around us. Let's share meals, share stories, share laughter, for the warmth of human kindness is an eternal flame, never to be extinguished by any coldness or hardship life may bring. The third lesson is about the value of ingenuity and adaptability. Medieval people, especially women, showed an incredible ability to transform the humblest ingredients into nourishment and sustenance, from salting, smoking, and drying to preserve food, to finding ways to process wild plants and roots to stave off hunger. They were masters of survival and creativity. Our gratitude should extend not only to our current abundance, but also to the skills and knowledge passed down, those small innovations that paved the way for modern culinary development. We can learn from them to appreciate what we have, to transform simple things into something valuable, and to continually seek to adapt in the face of all circumstances. Finally, the stories of medieval food also serve as a reminder of food justice and our responsibility. We've seen the brutal chasm between noble and peasant dining tables, between abundance and famine. Despite immense progress, hunger and food inequality still persist in many parts of the world. The story from the past is a call to action. We have a responsibility to fight for a world where everyone has the right to be well fed, to access safe and nutritious food. Let's be a part of the change by supporting sustainable food initiatives, sharing with the less fortunate, and raising awareness about the importance of not wasting food. Dear listeners, let these whispers from distant winters be more than just historical tales. Let them be vivid reminders of gratitude for what we have, and a warm fire igniting our spirits to continually strive for a better future. Whenever you enjoy your meal, remember our ancestors, the strength that carried them through it all, and the legacy of resilience they left for us. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining me on this journey to explore these captivating historical stories. Every view, every comment from you is an immense source of motivation for us to continue bringing you profound and meaningful content. If you feel these stories have brought you value, please support us by subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. And don't hesitate to share this video with your loved ones and friends. After all, the lessons from the past, especially about gratitude and resilience, always deserve to be widely spread. We wish you a peaceful night and sweet dreams.